really interesting what we're seeing coming through these pictures from Scotland, you know, the sort of pageantry and all the beautiful British ceremonial things that you expect to see with a royal death. But also the fact that Her Majesty has died in Scotland, there is a political side to all of this as well. And do you think much will be made of the fact that she is having these 2 nights, one at Holyrood House tonight, then at St Giles's Cathedral, lying in state? Is that something that, you know, people who are in favour of trying to keep the union together will be making much of? Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's brilliant the way they've done this. And as you say, it's just by chance that she happens to be there. But I think she was a very strong unifying force, and they've clearly tried to make the most of this, clearly with all 4 parts of the kingdom. And the royal family, of course, has kept the union together. So I think we'll see more of that in the coming days, the need that she was the queen of the whole nation.
So much happening, so much for us all to take in, Andrew, in terms of protocol and tradition. These proclamations that were made yesterday, am I right in understanding you were at one yesterday?
No, I'm afraid I wasn't.
Oh, you weren't, sorry, I thought there were, yeah, right. But what was the significance of these proclamations made around the UK?
Well, I think, again, it shows the importance of history, that he's part of a long tradition, and that he commands the whole nation. So it's a sense that we are still separate nations but working together in a unified way.
So that is the king. When are we going to start calling Camilla the queen?
Well, I think that may take some time. Who knows? I mean, all the previous wives of monarchs have been queen consorts in this century, but we've always called them the queen. So I suspect quite soon. But of course, there's still, I think, some residual feeling against Camilla, and I think they're just feeling their way very carefully. But the Queen clearly prepared everyone for this, and by making her own views known a few months ago, I think it'll be very difficult for people.
So what was Prince Philip? Was he a consort?
He was a consort.
But we never called him a consort?
We didn't.
Why didn't? What would his official title have been?
Well, I think he started off being called the Prince Consort, and then he just became Prince Philip.
It's so interesting the way the next 7-8 days will unfold in terms of the king. So busy. And I understand Operation Springtide, as it's known. This is him visiting every corner of the 4 nations over the course of this period of mourning. It's very much his wish. This is in a departure from what the Queen did when she acceded to the throne. And is that a signal, then, do you think, that he very much wants to try and keep the monarchy together, to keep the union together and carry the monarchy forward into the future?
Absolutely. I think what's interesting is the mood music at the moment is he'll be a very traditional king. He's followed on from his mother. But I think gradually we'll see things changing. And, you know, we live in a very changed country from 1952.
We've lived in a very changed country in the past week.
Yes, well, exactly, yes.
We do. Who will accompany the king on this Operation Springtide, do you know?
Well, they all have their own responsibilities. So, for example, Princess Anne has always covered Scotland. We'll clearly have the Prince of Wales covering Wales. So they all have their role, and it'll be interesting to see what roles are given to other members of the royal family, what role Prince Andrew may play in all this, and Prince Andrew and Sophie Wessex, who were very close to the Queen.
Yeah, and interesting you mentioned Prince Andrew, and we've also just heard Cameron talking about the Sussexes perhaps being at St Giles's today for that service of Thanksgiving, perhaps seeing some of those on the extremities of the royal family, for whatever reason, being brought back into the fold. How do you think the British public are going to receive them? I mean, Meghan in particular seemed to be well received outside Windsor on Saturday, didn't she?
Well, I think, you know, they're capitalising on the spirit of huge respect and reverence to the Queen. I think she would have wanted, she didn't like confrontation, nor does Prince Charles. So this is an opportunity for the family to come together in memory of the Queen. Whether these truces will last very long, who knows? But I think while Harry and Meghan are in this country, I think they have to be brought into the tent. And there's always been a terrific dignity in the way they've been treated. And I think that will continue while they're here.
So let's take a history lesson. Tell us about the last member of royalty that died in Scotland.
Well, it was James V in 1542.
Wow.
So
no, I'm sorry, I was reacting to that, yeah.
It's a long time. I mean, what's fascinating, if you look at the files for these funerals, which, I mean, for example, I did a book on Mountbatten, and there's something like 16 files revised all the time. they cover almost every eventuality. And indeed, with Edward VIII, Duke of Windsor, again, every eventuality depending on where he died.
And what about the name that the King has decided to use as monarch? Obviously, he's gone with his birth name, and a few people sort of surprised at that decision, given perhaps the legacy of King Charles I and King Charles II. Tell us why they are slightly controversial historically.
Well, I mean, Charles I got executed, and Charles II was a merry monarch with lots of mistresses, so not necessarily the right sort of background. But I think it is interesting. I mean, traditionally, they've taken other names. Bertie became George VI and David became Edward VIII. And I think there was some speculation that he would be George VII. But he's clearly very happy with his name and wants to continue.
Which was the madness of King George? Was that King...
That was George III.
Oh, that was George, not Charles. There we go. Getting
Yeah.
my kings muddled. There you go. This is why we need history lessons from the likes of
But it was a
you.
very good film.
It was a good
Yes.
film. It was a good film.
This period of mourning, it's very long. And is this something... I mean, were these rules drawn up, you know, in 1925 or something, or for a modern world? And I think, you know, people want this chance to particularly go to London, to go to some of the parks in London and lay wreaths and things like that, and to file past the Queen's coffin in Westminster Hall. But this idea of events, some events are cancelled, some aren't, and there's a sort of not a very great
I think it's very
consistency.
confused, and I'm very surprised that there isn't a clearer line about what's happening. I think people are making their own decisions. But you're right. The publishing parties have been cancelled, and yet publishing festivals and literary festivals are going on. So I think everyone is just feeling their way. I think it's important that there's a bank holiday on Monday. I think that's right. But as you say, it is a long period.
I think it's a wrong title for a bank holiday. It suggests something that is, you know, fun and a day off. I mean, a public day of remembrance or something. But it was. I just think it's the wrong tone to call it a bank holiday.
I mean, I think there's, excuse me, genuine questions about why it couldn't have been held on a Sunday, given that the country is in a state of a crisis at the moment, the schools having been closed for such a sustained period during lockdown, to be closed again on the Monday. It would have been the 10th day that the funeral was supposed to be held, and it was because the death was announced so late that it was moved over onto the Monday. But I wonder how carefully that was debated and discussed, because a Sunday would have been much more sensible, wouldn't it?
Well, I suspect there's a lot of policy being made on the hoof. I mean, this was a surprise, I think, for everyone. It came very suddenly, and I think clearly people were not totally prepared. And I think there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes and stuff being made up literally as day by day.